Turn to Proverbs 8:25. Wisdom continues to speak, and she says, "Before the mountains were settled, before the hills was I brought forth." I here, of course, is wisdom personified, as we've seen with the previous verses. And she says, before the mountains were settled, before the hills was I brought forth. Well, God existed for all eternity before he created the earth and brought forth the mountains. I'll give you a verse that'll establish that. In Psalm 90, verse 2. It says, before the mountains were brought forth, which is pretty well exactly what Proverbs 8:25 is saying. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever thou hadst formed the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting, thou art God. So God's eternal. God's always existed for eons. It won't even be eons because there's no time, but for an unimaginable amount of time before the earth was ever created, God was just there. God just existed for trillions of years, if there could be such a thing. And then one day, he just decided that he was going to create the universe and the earth. He didn't need to. He did it for his own pleasure. It wasn't necessary. But he wanted to. And he did. Now the mountains and the hills were created on the third day of creation, when God gathered the waters together into one place and made the dry land appear. It doesn't specifically say here, this is Genesis 1, 9 through 10. It doesn't specifically say that he created the mountains and the hills at this time, but if you think about what is being described here, that would be creating mountains and hills. Genesis 1, 9 and 10. And God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas, and God saw that it was good. Now, assuming that God did not diminish the amount of water on the earth, if he didn't remove water from the earth, how would you make dry land appear and gather water into one place? It would be by raising up the land, right? Which is mountains and hills by definition. So he raised up the land, and then the water naturally would go to the lowest point, and that's where the seas and the oceans came from. So this is what wisdom is saying there. Before the mountains were settled, before the hills was I brought forth. So wisdom was around before he did any of that. She says before the mountains were settled. This is interesting. Settled means that has sunk down or subsided. Of earth, it means compacted, consolidated. So when God made the mountains, when he brought the earth up out of the ocean, what would happen after that? It would settle, right? Well, before it settled, he had brought forth wisdom. He had all that figured out before he ever did it. Before the hills and the mountains had sunk down and dried up, God had brought forth wisdom. And just like we saw in Proverbs 8:24, the Lord is telling us that before the creation of the world, that's when he brought forth wisdom. And if you remember, to bring forth means to bring to light or public view. And I'm not going to read those verses again, but remember the verses that I read here just a few minutes ago? In Leviticus 24:14, Joshua 2:3, Genesis 14:18, and Genesis 24:53, we saw that in each case, bring or brought forth means to bring to light, to bring into public view. Like the guy that cursed, and the gold and silver that was brought forth. Melchizedek brought forth bread and wine, right? Brought it into public view. Rahab brought forth the spies, and so on. And then as we also noted in the comments in verse 8:24, God used wisdom to create the world, which is why he brought it forth before he began creating. And I will just give you this one verse and we'll be done. Proverbs 3 and verse 19. Proverbs 3:19. The Lord by wisdom hath founded the earth, by understanding hath he established the heavens. And in a sense, it was on that the second day of creation when he founded the earth. In the first day he created the heavens and the earth, but the earth was covered in water. Then on the second day he brings forth the earth up out of the water and made the dry land. And what did he call the dry land? earth. Right? So he, in a sense, he did found the earth by wisdom also, by bringing up the dry land on the second day. And he did all that by wisdom. Because that would take some smarts too, to figure out how you were going to, just imagine, how would you do that? I don't know. How would you make the mountains come out of the earth and move put out the oceans?
Make all of it out of nothing.
Yeah, how would you do all that? Take a lot of wisdom, wouldn't it? So that takes care of verse 25. Just a quick note